I am an AP clerk, and the time I spend performing data entry is greatly reduced by the Datahaven for Dynamics OCR extension. Data entry used to be the largest part of my everyday tasking, but now I have time to perform other, more profitable tasks for my company. Documents come into our organization via postal mail, fax, or into our AP email inbox, which you can see here. Regardless of how invoices come into the organization, they are sent to the pending OCR queue, where they can be picked up by the OCR process and automatically processed. Currently, we have 2 invoices in the queue. Let's take a look. The first invoice is from a vendor named Stewart Apothecary. It's got lots of line items. It even goes on to a second page. So you can imagine how long it would take to key in all these line items using a manual data entry process. The invoice total is for around $2,700. The second invoice is from a vendor named JWS of Colorado. It's got fewer line items, and it's for around $1,500. We received a third invoice via email. Let's take a look at that one. It's from a vendor named Plunger Lift Systems. It's got just a few line items, and it's for around $550. We'll need to get this invoice into workflow with the rest of the invoices so that it can be processed. To do this, we can use the Datahaven for Outlook extension. Using drag and drop, I can drop that document directly into workflow. So now I've created a batch of 3 invoices that can be processed through OCR. So OCR has picked up this batch, and it'll take just a few seconds for a batch of this size. While that's running, you might be asking yourself how OCR can be effective for AP invoices, since the formats are all vendor generated. Every vendor has a different invoice format, so it would seem that keeping up with all the different templates on the admin side would negate the data entry time and money savings that you get. But Datahaven's OCR extension does things differently. We store a library of fingerprints, each of which relates to a specific vendor. Each invoice image is analyzed against this library and matched up to the associated vendor. From there, Datahaven uses a combination of zonal and keyword lookup technologies to pull data elements from the invoices. For any unmatched invoices, data entry operators train the system to recognize new vendor formats while they're doing their data entry functions. You'll see how simple and fast this process is in a minute. The OCR process should be done now. So let's move on to the next step in the process, the verify step. The verify step is where data entry operators can review the results of the OCR process. Business rules are applied to every field that's recognized off of the invoices, and any errors are flagged so that the operator can review them. OCR has come a long way, but it's not perfect. So the business rules and the verify process close the gaps. You'll notice that all the fields are filled in for this invoice. That means that we are able to match up this invoice with a fingerprint that we have stored in our library. From there, we are able to look up the vendor number from NAV. The NAV vendor number is never printed on your vendor's invoice, so we have to look it up from NAV and apply it when we perform automated data entry. You'll also notice that the fields are listed in different colors. The blue fields mean that these fields didn't fail any business rules, so we don't need to review these fields. The fields that are highlighted in yellow failed a low confidence check. The OCR engine assigns a confidence rating to every field that it recognizes. If any character in any of the fields falls below a certain threshold, then the field is flagged so the operator can review it, and the individual characters that failed the confidence check are flagged in red. This is a powerful feature because it makes it so that the operator only has to review exactly the fields that failed the low confidence check. So now using hotkey navigation, I can very quickly go through this invoice and correct the pieces of data. So although I do have to visit some fields and perform some corrections, I'm only having to visit a small subset of the characters within a small subset of the fields. So you can see where some efficiency gains can be made. You notice that as I was performing my review, I was iterating through the line items. So in addition to the header data, we also pull line item data off the invoices. You can see all the line items that were recognized by the OCR process. This is a non-PO invoice, so when we export this invoice to NAV, we'll be creating a brand new purchase invoice record, complete with all the line items. If this was a purchase order invoice, a PO invoice, then we would match these recognized line items up with line items that exist on a PO that's already in NAV. The Verify window tells me that I'm done with this page, so I'll move on to the next one. For this invoice, most of the fields are blank. So that means that this invoice was not matched against a fingerprint that we have in our library. So the operator will need to perform identification of all the areas of this invoice so that the next time it comes in, it can be processed like the first invoice was. We'll start by associating this template, or this fingerprint, with the vendor. So I'll type in a partial vendor name, and I'll choose a piece of cross-reference information, such as the zip code. I'll perform a lookup in NAV. I found the vendor number, so now I've associated this image with this vendor. Now I'll need to perform data entry. I can do that using the clicking key feature. As I click on areas of the image, it automatically populates the data entry area on the left. And not only is that a quick and error-free way to perform data entry, but the system's also going to remember where I click, so the next time that an invoice that matches this format comes in, it'll know where to look for the data elements. The invoice total is already filled in, and that's because of a technology called IntelliCate. IntelliCate uses keyword lookups to find data elements automatically on the invoice. So in this case, we found the word total. We looked to the right, and we were able to locate the data element. So the total was already filled in. In addition to the header data, we'll also have to zone the line item data. And that's also a very simple process. We simply identify the first line, again using clicking key. Now I'll click Find Details. And just by identifying the first line item, we're able to find the rest of the line items. That's it for this invoice. And now the next time that this invoice comes into the system, then we won't have to perform this identification step. It'll find all the data elements like it did for the first invoice. Now the Verify window is telling me that my batch is done, so I'll click Yes to move it on to export, which is the next step in the process. You may be wondering what happened to our third invoice, the one from Plunger Lift Systems that I dragged in from email. Since it didn't show up in Verified, that means that all the business rules passed and there were no low confidence characters, so there's no need to verify the data. We set up our system this way, but it can be configured for 100% verification to allow organizations to spot check every invoice, even those with no identified issues. The export process is done, so let's go into NAV and see what we got. The export process runs additional business rules on the data. One of the business rules we set up is to automatically route invoices that are over $1,000 to workflow so that managers can approve them before we put them in line for payment. Our first invoice from Stewart Apothecary, you'll remember, was for around $2,700, so it was routed to the manager queue for approval. The second invoice from JWS of Colorado, also over $1,000, it's for around $1,500, so it's also been routed for approval as well. And again, you'll remember we had 3 invoices, so we're still missing our Plunger Lift Systems invoice. We set up our business rules so that any invoice that's under $1,000 can be automatically posted by the OCR export process. So we'll find that document in the posted invoices list. So if we go to posted purchase invoices, there's our Plunger Lift Systems invoice. The OCR export process packages up all the data that's recognized into XML and sends it to the NAV Business Web Services. The web services perform additional validations against the data to make sure that we have good data before we create our NAV record. Then it creates the NAV record, inserting all the header data and all the line item data. In addition, it also attaches the image to the record so that it can be permanently archived with the invoice. Anybody who opens this posted purchase invoice record will always be able to see the vendor's source invoice. Nobody had to perform any data entry on this invoice. Nobody even had to verify it. and nobody even had to manually post it. So this shows how the system can be configured for truly touchless AP processing.